Hello and welcome. I am your host, Eva Jenkins, and welcome to Women TV. I am super excited to continue with you on this journey of figuring out how to be our best selves in this new year. Well, welcome 2023. It has been a whirlwind since 2020, and I cannot imagine it continuing to get better for, well, some of us. And so, what do we do when change happens and when we feel instability? Because if we're honest, many of us have felt that since these last few years, and just noticing how it might be continuing throughout this decade, to not really know what to expect and to expect the unexpected. Well, many of us will go to external things and to fulfill our internal well-being, whereas we might not exactly have the right and healthy coping skills that's needed to help us get through. And what I really want to do is be able to give some tools as to what might be helpful. And it will always start with a mindset. It always starts in our thinking, how we think about ourselves, about others, about the world, even about our spirituality, our faith, and really knowing what kind of questions do we have in these moments where we might get interjected to face these questions head on. Well, 2020 had definitely brought that in order for us to face questions maybe we haven't asked before. And in order to be really honest with ourselves, we really have to question and examine ourselves and examine our thinking, why it is that we're thinking what we're thinking, and being truly honest to what we are thinking. Because a lot of times our thinking is not conscious. In fact, a lot of our responses are subconscious. And when we think about subconscious, think about driving. When you're first learn how to drive, you are very hyper vigilant as to everything around you. You are more mindful, you're more careful, you are more observant. And after a few months, you feel like, oh, do you know what? I got this, it's okay. And we allow our defenses to come down, whereas now driving subconsciously because we're no longer having to be hyper vigilant because it's no longer something new. So normally when we learn something new, we are more aware, we are slowing down, we are practicing or taking things a little bit longer in order to comprehend that new skill. And so after a few months of driving, you're no longer going to be fully conscious about what you're doing, because now you might be on your cell phones. Now you might be talking on the phone. You might be multitasking, in which we can completely disturb ourselves and not really notice what's going on because we're no longer being mindful as the task that's ahead of us. We're no longer treating it as we first did when we first started. And so even though we might do things differently, it's just noticing what are those messages that we're constantly giving ourselves. Are we saying that we no longer need to pay attention about something? And so when unhealthy coping skills comes inside of our minds, it's because we normally don't know how to deal with the situation. And when I think about external coping skills, you can think about drinking, using drugs, you can think about lashing out, having behaviors that can destruct the bodies. And when we think about that, it can be because we don't know how to handle or self-soothe what is really happening inside of us. And that can be really disturbing to us because maybe it wasn't shown to us. It wasn't given to us as a little child. And therefore, it's very hard to comprehend how to do that for ourselves. And there's this concept called re-parenting. where we have to start showing ourselves how we can reparent and really self-soothe and validate and show ourselves that we are here for ourselves rather than causing more distrust in our emotional systems. Every time we do something that we do not want to do, we are learning how to lie to ourselves. And I know everyone wants to be truthful. I know everyone wants to have integrity. I know that best intentions might be there, but subconsciously, we just keep doing the wrong thing over and over without really understanding why. And so really learning how to examine ourselves can help us with this process, because now we are confronting what's inside. So even asking ourselves, why am I going to this external behavior? Why do I keep going to the bar when I keep telling myself I'm not to? Normally, changing our environment, changing our surroundings can help with this decision of making changes and implementing healthier patterns into our life. But if we don't have the self-control in order to do this yet, and if we know we always give in to our friends, we can't necessarily implement this healthy coping skill. So it can be really difficult to continue on this path of learning how to be truthful with ourselves and honest when we keep doing maladaptive behaviors. And one way in order to help is to really be honest with what you can do. Now, one thing I've learned is not going all in all at the same time. In fact, it's finding one small thing that can change throughout your day. So if you were to think about what is realistic for you, if you know that Friday nights you are going to say yes to that bar, well then continue to go, but make it a half an hour later or a half an hour earlier you come home. Do something that doesn't make it a drastic change right away, because then you are learning how to be curious with yourself and seeing what is feasible. What are you willing to do? And therefore, you can learn, what can I do for that other half an hour? What can I implement instead? So one thing about the mind is that it doesn't necessarily tell us the truth. We actually have to tell it the truth. And since our brain can lie to us, we have to ask ourselves, am I trying to keep myself safe? Am I trying to keep myself comfortable? Am I trying to protect myself in any kind of way? Asking yourself these questions can help us confront what is going on inside and how are we going to the thing that is making us feel better. For some of us, it might even be food. And so really being honest as to why we're going to the refrigerator for comfort. What are we looking for? What do we really need? And what exactly are we trying to comfort? A lot of times it can be not feeling heard, not being seen, not feeling validated or understood. It could be just reassurance that we need. And many times we have no idea what it is that we're searching for. And so really slowing down, really asking yourself, do I really need to go out? Will this really help me with my goals? Will this really help me with who I want to become? And if the answer is no, be okay with minimizing it just by an inch. Don't think you have to go all in, right? Sometimes we can get those rigid patterns in our brains of thinking that we have to do everything at once, or that everything is black and white, or everything is yes or no. Allow there to be some gray. Allow there to be curiosity. Allow there to be differences in what you normally would think. Allow other opinions to come in, but then to allow yourself to ultimately figure out what is best for you. Because at the end of the day, we are all trying to do our best. We want the best for ourselves, we want the best for our families and the people that we're connected to. And nothing is wrong with that, but it begins with us. And it begins by identifying our patterns in our brain and noticing what are we thinking about. So even if you were to write down what your thoughts are and identify those 3 questions, how am I keeping myself safe? How am I keeping myself protected? What am I doing or saying? How am I behaving in order to get the results that I want? Or how am I being destructive? How am I not honoring myself and the choices that I make? When we lie to ourselves, we are essentially living in a state of denial. So learning how to get out of that is helpful. It helps us to become more conscious to what is really going on. And it allows that subconscious to work a little bit harder in order for it to become more conscious. So remember, a new skill can be difficult. It can take time. We have to learn how to be patient with ourselves, that it's okay to be patient and giving yourself the permission that it's okay. Nothing will ever look perfect. And as long as we are willing to adapt to learning ourselves a little bit differently, learning how we now fit into our new environment can help us overcome any of those challenges that life might bring. Because resilience is in you, my friends. And even though it's hard to see how we can push through, especially through difficulties, just know what you have is already in you. But it just takes a renewing of the mind in order to get us there. Because our perception can always change. And if our perception can always change, that means we always have a new choice to make. We have possibilities, and then we can have mobility in order to do something different. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this talk with me today. If you like this, please be sure to put down a comment, let me know, and I hope that you will join me next time in Be Golden in this golden hour.